Hi everyone, welcome to another Wolfram Language Design Review. We are looking today at external evaluators. So, Ricardo, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so today we're going to introduce something that is more like an incremental update. Basically what we are going to introduce is the concept of external evaluator, which is something that doesn't exist right now in external evaluate. We only have a concept for session. We have an object for that, but we really don't have an object for an evaluator itself. Now, the way you discover
Hold on one second.
evaluator.
For LLMs, we do have the notion of an LLM evaluator, right? We have an LLM
I
configuration, right? We have the notion of an LLM configuration,
I
right?
think
You,
so,
you,
even
you know
if
what
I
I'm
don't know
talking
the
about?
detail of those. Yes.
But the way that works is in something like LLM synthesize, you say LLM evaluator arrow, and then you say what the LLM configuration that you're going to use is. Is that right? I hope somebody here knows.
I'm not familiar,
Well,
unfortunately,
so
with this
go look
design.
it up, please. Could you just go look at the
Hmm.
documentation for LLM configuration?
Yes.
Okay, this seems relevant. Right, that's an LLM configuration, and then you say LLM synthesize with LLM evaluator arrow the LLM configuration. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Is that relevant to what you're going to be talking about?
It's similar, meaning that there is some setting for the evaluator, um,
All right, let's keep
but
going
we
then.
don't specifically have the configuration. Not sure
No,
we
I
need it.
understand. I understand. So let's take a look. Okay.
Okay, so the way you discover evaluators on your machine up to this version is that basically you define external evaluators, Python or
Yep.
whatever is the system, gets you a data set.
Yep.
And then you can basically
Yep.
extract the evaluator, but the evaluator is the fully specified evaluator path. So we need to move, unfortunately, away from that and create an object that is able to encapsulate both a concrete evaluator, like this one, and both an evaluator that we can provision by ourselves, that is more made by, you could call it a configuration, I guess. External evaluators open close is the new interface we are trying to propose here. And it basically just returns a list of external evaluator objects that is pretty similar to what external sessions is doing. You do external
Can I see
sessions open
that? Can I see what
close.
happens if you say external sessions?
Sure. So first we do start external session of Python, and then we do external sessions. This is now installing a Python
Okay.
installation on my
All right.
machine. Those are all the running session. And so
Okay. Yep.
the design here will be similar. Also, the naming is similar because we have external sessions and external session
Okay,
object.
so
So
within an
external.
external session object, there's a pointer to an external evaluator object. Is that correct, or that's the plan?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
It's gonna be inside. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, so you can do external evaluator Node.js, and then you can directly start a session by, copy pasting this guy in here. This will start a session object now.
Yep.
And then you can, yeah, blah, and delete. Otherwise, you can directly take the external evaluator object, use it with external evaluate. This will manage the session. So open, close the session, do the computation, etc. The return value for external evaluate will change, meaning that previously register external evaluate was returning the UUID of the evaluator. Now that we have an evaluator object, kind of makes sense to return the evaluator object, and we think that even if this is a backward incompatible change, probably it's not that big of a deal, because we assume people are going to use it mostly interactively. Um, and so we think that changing this default value, sorry, the return value should be safe in
Return
theory.
value of register external evaluator.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, there's
Yeah,
an
because.
alternative, obviously, which
Mhm.
is, I mean, we could introduce a new function. But I want to understand this for a minute. Okay. So
Mhm.
why the external evaluator object,
Mhm.
why is that not a create external evaluator? Why is it a register? Why is it not create? Because that's usually what when we make an object, it's a create. See what I'm saying? And that way, if
Mm,
we did that, we don't have any incompatibility because we can just I mean, not that I think the incompatibility is that important, but I think register is a weird concept here. I mean, wouldn't it be normally in most things that are blah 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 blahs, plural, isn't the way to create one of these things mostly create blah blah blah?
Well, I mean, my plan is to simply return one of these objects when a function is in charge of creating it. So external evaluators is basically taking a look at your file system and creating, quote unquote, those evaluators, even if it's not creating anything because it's just a pointer to that evaluator we found.
So what does
It is
register
true
do?
that,
What does register external evaluator do?
okay. Um, So basically, it will make it appear now in external evaluators open close. So if I do now external evaluators open close Python, you should see my newly registered environment. And so here we have several of them.
Yeah, okay, I get it. I get it.
Um,
Can I make a
right,
suggestion about these? Another thing I think would be useful is to give a creation date for that in the properties of the external evaluator object. Why not give a creation date?
sure,
Because that way, it's oh, I made that 6 months ago type thing, something like that.
sure,
Just
makes
seems
sense.
like it might be useful.
Mhm.
Um,
I mean, I do have it internally.
no, I understand.
I
I'm just
just need to
suggesting it
format
might
it.
be
Yeah.
worth exposing it, and possibly even when you do external evaluators, what's the
Mhm.
sort order of those? How do you sort them?
Though those are defined into my code that basically, I'm first going to look at this guy, this guy, this guy. The sort of the whole evaluator, sorry. Um, File system lookup. So basically whatever is named first, I think there should
Okay, so
be in
maybe we could do
alphabetical order.
something where the creation date or the use time, if it knows when it was used, that might be another thing worth storing. And then it puts the most recent used one first. Does that make sense?
Right. We are not saving that information right now, but we
Should
could, I
we?
guess.
I mean, it seems like it might be
Yeah,
useful.
that's useful. I agree, that's useful.
So
Then you can always just look at the first one in the list as the one you've most recently used.
exactly.
I like
Right.
that, yeah.
So then we'd sort them by most recently used first. And then we'd also have the creation dates in here.
Right.
Okay, let's come back to can we come back to the register thing? So what does register really do?
Okay, so register is basically creating, there is a registry in the file system. So the registry is persistent. You do
Is it in the
registry.
local object store or where is it?
It is under external evaluate application folder. Um, yeah, and you are basically saving an entry for each object.
Okay,
Um,
so I've got another question. I mean, if I go to a different machine,
okay.
do I have any fighting chance of preserving my dependencies and all that kind of stuff? In other words, if I want to say I want to set up a clone of this environment on my new machine, what do I do?
Yes, yes. No, no. This is really straightforward. Okay. So I'll show you. Okay. So when you do registry, you get back the external evaluator object. The external evaluator object contains everything that is needed in order to provision the environment. There are those two keys that are really tied to your machine, but everything else is not. And so you simply need to take this object and use it into another machine and it should work. The first thing it will do is to check if the evaluator is there. If it's not there, it will use the information inside the log specification in order to provision it. So
Okay, so it
really,
will just
you
work basically. If I copy that onto another machine, if I copy that external evaluator object onto another machine and try running it, it will try and provision itself. Is
yes,
that right?
yeah.
So may I make another suggestion? Okay.
Mhm.
So what does an unprovisioned external evaluator object look like? So in other words, let's say, like for example, for our percent reference stuff, right? If you copy a percent reference to another session, it'll show up with the different colors and it'll make it clear that it lost its link. So in this case, I would suggest something similar. See what I'm saying? So in other words, if you simply take that external evaluator object and copy it onto a machine where the thing is not yet provisioned, right? It should indicate that somehow.
You mean in the boxes?
In the box, yeah.
Okay. Sure. Can be
to
done.
indicate that it isn't yet, and then I don't know how you provision it. If I simply evaluate it, would it provision itself, or what would it do? How would it do that?
So external evaluate, yes. The moment you're going to use it is going to be provisioned.
But what if I
before.
actually just evaluate external evaluator object? If I press Shift Return, if I type it as input.
No, it's not
press
doing
Shift.
anything. It's not doing anything.
Are you sure that that's
just
the right
a symbolic
thing?
Yeah.
Well, why doesn't it check its validity? And if it isn't valid, validate itself, so to speak.
It's an object, so I assume it is valid because it was created by another system.
Yeah, but it's not valid. It's going to say in big blaring letters, "I'm not valid yet."
Well, maybe we need to. Yes, we only need to write, not existing yet or something.
Right, but no, but it
doesn't need to be even scary or anything, because in the end,
I know it's not scary, but
you can just use it.
Yeah, you probably can just use it, assuming that you can download, that you can get this provisioned on this machine. It's not self-evident, right?
I would say under the plus sign, when you unfold it, can you click on that? I would just say something like provisioning, and then something like in parentheses, not yet provisioned, or something like that.
I think it should be visible at the top, because I think it's really, if it's provisioned, you can use it. So I would say.
But you can use it anyway, right?
Well, you may not be able to use it. I don't think it's so obvious that it will provision itself. When it says runtime 3.13.3, what does that mean?
So this is the runtime of the system that is supposed to provision. Yeah.
Okay, so that could say system Python, and then it could say paren unprovisioned or something. As a second line here. Okay,
but that might be more confusing, right? Because if it's saying unprovisioned, you're going to be like, okay, well, what do I need to do? And then you might not think just to try it, which Ricardo seems to be suggesting in most situations would just work.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. Okay. All right. Okay, that's a fair point. Okay.
Stephen, there is another argument against self-evaluating to provisioning, because so far this is a purely symbolic information-like thing.
Yes.
And if you wanted to change, it becomes mutable, and you have no way to do that within the
You're right. You're right. I retract. Okay. Okay.
Future kind of direction might go into this direction, that where basically you have this object and you can do stuff like, ensure that this guy is installed, like, there could be like validate installation or something.
God, I hate these things with sub-valued ways of doing this.
Right. But it could be a way to do
that's
it.
exactly doing something which is, it's the thing isn't mutable because it's all in a registry. Okay. By the way, Sandor on our live
the
stream,
object will not mutate itself. It is just installing from the configuration.
No, I understand. But when you look at the external evaluator object, it will look different because it is going to the registry and picking up different stuff because it has been poked. Okay, can we come back to? Could you go back up for a second?
You mentioned Sandor's suggestion. I kind of like that. The gray,
graying out the Python icon.
Yeah.
If it isn't yet provisioned. That seems pretty harmless.
Sure.
That's nice and subtle. Yeah.
We were thinking about something similar for sessions, and maybe it makes sense also here.
Okay. All right. Fine. So hold on. I want to suggest something here. So instead of register, I don't understand why there isn't create external evaluator. I think it should be create. It's putting something into the file system like create object, like create local object and things like this, I don't see
Well,
why it would create.
I'm only using this register external evaluator because it's one of the few functions that is actually returning to you an external evaluator object. So right now with this design, the only way you're getting back an external evaluator object is by doing start external session, which returns to you a session. And then from the session, you need to extract the evaluator. The only functions that are right now returning evaluators are register and unregister. It might be that we
Okay.
might also need a create external evaluator, but
No,
for
I'm not suggesting. I'm
now-
suggesting the following. Okay, I'm
Mhm.
suggesting obsolete register external evaluator, which doesn't do the thing you want it to do now anyway, right? It returns a file path. It does not return an object. I'm suggesting that we introduce a new function called create external evaluator, which is the going forward thing that you're supposed to use. Okay,
Mhm.
we can deprecate register external evaluator, and then delete object is what you would use if you want to get rid of it. Instead of unregister, you delete it. Because what I'm saying is this thing, it's like any
Okay.
other object. It is a thing that you create, right?
Okay, but there is another usage for register external evaluator that maybe you're not getting, which is the old one. So let's say that I have a Python evaluator somewhere on my machine that for some reason, when you do external evaluators open close, our system is not able to find because it's somewhere.
Yep.
With register external evaluator, you can take that path, do register external evaluator, give it a name, and then see it and use it when you do external evaluators open close. And so you
Fine.
can
Why
basically
isn't that
register.
done with create external evaluator? You give it the path. Why isn't that
Okay.
exactly the right thing?
Because I would imagine then doing delete object of that guy will not delete the actual evaluator. Now, we could have some logic that is saying, okay, if it is something that we haven't provisioned, we can delete it, otherwise not, or vice versa. But
So hold on. The registry is in a definite place on your system, right?
yes, the registry is just meta information. Yes, it's a
No,
file
but
with some data.
there's a thing there. There's a
Mhm.
thing we could think of as an object that is the registry entry, correct?
Yes, but it's only the meta information associated to the environment,
I
not
understand. I understand.
Okay.
So the idea that you would actually be deleting the files that are the Python installation is a different idea. Do we have any way to delete the files right now?
Not right now.
Okay, fine. So we're not losing anything.
Yes,
So-
but I was imagining that something like create environment, delete environment, or delete object would suggest the actual deletion of the environment.
But do we want that?
In some cases, absolutely.
Eventually, yes, because now you can create those environments so easily that you need to be able to delete them also easily. So yes,
Okay,
I
well,
would
so
imagine
why
that.
aren't we just deleting them? If you say, in other words, if you say delete object, why not delete the thing?
Well, there's two cases, right? There's the case where you create them via Wolfram language functions, right? Like
Right.
a start
Yes.
external. And there's one where users have,
I got it.
Julia
I got
or
it.
Python or whatever installed
Right.
on their
But-
machine.
but-
And we don't want to
so
delete those,
if I might
obviously.
say so, I think this is obvious, right? Because if we create it in our file area. If they already had it, we are linking to their random.
Yeah, as long as it's obvious, that's fine. Yeah.
Right. It will be obvious, right? Because if we're creating something, okay, when we provision, an evaluator, and we bring in all these dependencies, where are those dependencies being installed?
They're going to be under our user library directory, etc.
Okay, fine. So they're in our area.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so I think this is really obvious. I think delete object deletes everything in our area and doesn't do anything to anything elsewhere. And that's
Yeah.
the story.
Okay,
And
then
since you say it's
basically doing the lead object of this guy should return an error of some sort.
Because it's opt homebrew. That's
Because
not our
this
area.
is
So we
this is
don't, yeah.
yeah, this is basically on my
We're
machine.
not touching that. Yeah. We're not touching that.
We should not touch it,
well,
and this one should
hold on.
fail.
If you had a bunch of dependencies installed around that,
No, you don't want to touch that. See, you want to only delete.
no.
Show an example with just a locally created one, Ricardo. Like that's a better example because we're
Yeah,
focusing on the wrong thing here.
you can take one of those guys, like this one, and this one can be deleted.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly
This
what we
one
want.
is-
That's
That's
what we
the thing
want.
that lives in our user,
Yes,
application.
But you
exactly,
shouldn't be
directory.
able to delete that other thing.
No, absolutely
Yeah,
not. No, I
but
would never
but
want
the
to.
nice thing, I'm not sure whether or not we want to do is because right now with this design with register and a registry and a register, there is this thing which is the registry and then there is the file system. Now I can go into my file system, delete all the environments, and still the registry is there, meaning that the next time I run
cares?
something,
Who
it will
cares?
install it.
Who cares? No. I mean, if you go in and start, look, I could go into the local
Mhm.
object store and I could worm my way into the local object store and start deleting things. If everything becomes incompatible after that, it's your own funeral.
No,
May I make
sure.
a general comment?
I'm saying that it works right now
No,
because
but
the
it's a bad
actual
idea.
store and the registry is decoupled.
Yes,
And
it's a
so the
bad
moment-
idea. I think it's a bad idea. Let me make the following comment. I'm going to make the following global claim. Whenever a system has a registry, it gets messed up. You see that all the time with file registries and operating systems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How many times do you have something where, something went wrong with the registry, this MIME type isn't opening the right thing, and so on? Registries are bad news. You don't want a registry which is independent of the actual files. If you can do it, you want something where the actual files stand for themselves, not having some indirect registry that can get out of sync. And by the way, the thing you just described, where you delete the files and then you've got a registry hanging out there thinking that there are files there, is a very bad case.
No, but the registry contains all the information that are used in order to provision the environment. So
Look, it's not a good idea, right? It's much better to just directly have, it's the same thing that people saying, oh, I'll use pointers, as opposed to just like, here's the symbolic object, it's right here. I don't see any argument for this registry. I think it's just a bad idea. I didn't think it was a good idea when we introduced it originally. I thought it was a hack.
I'm
There
kind
is
of
one,
okay with you.
Stephen.
The only problem is that then you are basically unable to register stuff that is there somewhere on
No,
your
that's
own
not
code.
true. You just say create external evaluator, and you give it a path.
But then you're suggesting that if we do create external evaluator of that guide, we'll create a virtual environment. Okay, but there are cases where for other evaluators like non-Python, this doesn't make sense, and it's used to let's say Node.js evaluator where we don't have the ability.
I'm telling you, it's a shitty design to have something with this registry. It's a bad design. We shouldn't do it. We should
Stephen,
figure
there
out
is
how to
one
make
use
the thing.
case. There is one
Yeah.
use case where it's useful, which is just caching, which means that it will completely be invalidated. It will still, like the file system will still be the king, but it will just save time in case when it's in sync. When not, it's just thrown away.
That's not a good argument. I mean, there's a lot of other ways to do that. We shouldn't have two different things that are basically the same thing, right? The registry entry and the actual thing. It doesn't make any sense.
Right, but the
It's like,
problem is
let's
that
not have a file system. Let's have every file have to be pointed to by another file. Doesn't make sense. I mean, I understand that there are some corner cases that need to be thought through, but I think what we should plan on is a design where it's create external evaluator, which creates an external evaluator object. You do use delete object to get rid of it. And now there's let's walk through all the corner cases of that, because that's what I think we should be designing. I mean, in other words, you say, what if there's already an installation of that thing on your, so I don't quite understand what create external evaluator should be doing. It should be producing, I would have assumed that the dependencies are being installed in some place in our file area, pointing to a raw binary that is not in our file area. Is that correct or is that not correct?
It depends for the evaluator. So in case of Python, for example, when you do create when we create a provision environment, it downloads Python and then it creates a virtual environment on top of it, and they are both under our control. But you can decide to create a virtual environment out of a system installation that you already got. this can be done as well.
Okay, but so that then has the virtual environment is in our file area, and the
Always
original
in our
installation
file
is
area.
not in.
Yes, the original installation is wherever it was at
Right.
the
Okay.
beginning.
Right.
Yes.
That's what I was imagining was a common case.
Mhm.
Yes. Keep going.
Yeah, no, just that. At least for Python, it's the
Okay,
system.
so what's
but
the
we need to
problem?
also
What's the
understand that create environment doesn't make sense in some languages, for example, where we don't provision environment.
Right. So then in that case, delete object does nothing. Then it just removes the link. Basically, it removes the name. Because in those languages, we're always pointing to a central installation, right? We don't yet have in those languages a way to install on the fly. In other words, if we say create external
Mhm.
Evaluator for a language where we cannot install it on the fly, we have to say, error, you've got to point this to a raw binary, correct?
Yes, and you're going to point it to a raw binary, and then it's doing nothing. It's just creating the external evaluator object with the information inside.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly, which is the right thing
Okay.
to do. There's no reason to have a registry which hangs around. You've just got this object that you created in that session. It's the thing.
Okay, but then it needs to be clear what this function is doing. One thing is that it is provisioning the environment. Probably it should also test it. We have testing functions that we run in order to make sure that an evaluator is valid, that you don't need to do any kind of installation. And
So that
maybe
would be
the
a
other
good thing
thing
for
that
create external evaluator to do.
right. And the other thing is that maybe it could have an option that says, install dependency, and it will just execute a couple of scripts that will make the environment ready for external evaluate, which means doing side effect on the user machine, like installing dependencies and stuff. Which is something that we don't do automatically because we don't have functions to do that, but we have documentation that are telling you, hey, go there and do manually this and that.
Which is horrible.
Right.
So create external evaluator seems like it is the big thing that does everything. I mean, I don't know. Would Todd like to speak up or Node? I hate these registry designs.
I like the idea of create external evaluator, and I think that Ricardo's not even objecting to it, right? It's just like, am I misunderstanding your point of view? Because this seems like a reasonable thing to do.
feature that is missing is that basically I have something on my machine and I cannot register it for users.
Yes, you can. You just say create external evaluator with that pointer.
But then I will need a registry to do that, right?
Why?
I need because if it's not on the button, look, basically you see those are fine.
No. I understand. The fact that there is a registry internally is no problem. There's nothing wrong with that. We just don't expose it to the user. As far as the user is concerned, this is an object. It's an external evaluator object, and that object contains a link to the raw binary. Right? We don't have to explain, oh, we had a registry and we're doing this and we're pointing to this file and that file and the other file. The user doesn't give a damn. So I'm saying the user could not care less whether it's a registry, a symbolic link, a copy, whatever else. Am I right?
You might be right. Yes.
Okay.
But Stephen, one issue with you're talking about sort of edge cases. Well, what do we do with the whole register external evaluator, unregister external evaluator business? Do we just throw it away? Do we just say
Just leave it alone? Yeah, just leave it alone, I would say.
Well, does that integrate? Leave it alone.
We could just say it's obsolete. No, I don't think we need to keep it working. I don't think we do. But I think it would be nice if we could keep it working for a version or two with a message saying it's going obsolete.
Well, look, in any case, looks like the registry is going to be around in any case to implement this feature where you want to register something that we don't find. So
fine, then keep it around.
Internally,
but we should obsolete those functions. We should say on the documentation page, this function is obsolete. Okay, use create external evaluator instead. Okay, and then
Okay. Mhm.
Okay, I mean, think it through. If there's some devastating thing that I'm not thinking of, you can raise it. But I think as far as the user is concerned, I don't, it's up to us to implement this with registries or whatever else we're implementing it with. But as far as the user is concerned, they're getting an external evaluator object. They create it, they delete it. And okay, let's look at the other things you're proposing here. So you're proposing various kinds of pokes to the external evaluator, right?
Well, okay, so this is a possible extension. So what I was thinking is that at least right now, we basically have two systems to discover evaluators. One is the local file system scan. The other one is the registry, where you basically go there and say,
Yeah, great,
I want to
wonderful.
save
Two
the item.
mechanisms, which is wonderful.
Right.
It's horrible.
And one can also imagine a Padlet manager mechanism. So for example, you could define inside your Padlet info file, you define the
If we were
specification.
sailing a ship here, the ship would be taking on water and we'd be bailing it out with, oh, let's put this random sub-value or, in here and so on. This is not a good picture, right? Because what is it we're actually trying to achieve here? We're trying to achieve find a Python by all means necessary, right? We don't know where there's a Python. We thought we saw one slithering away in this particular wooded area. Let's try and catch it. Is that the basic point here?
No, wait. So with the default and the provisioning, we are basically now have a system where you can create pattern environments on the fly. No, the problem that we're trying to solve with this Padlet manager stuff and standard environment, it's a long-standing issue that, now people are starting to use pattern environment for WFR. If everyone is creating an environment, you end up with 1,000 environment on your machine, right? So we would like some kind of discipline or some standard mechanism where if someone wants to implement, a Python function and needs to use this or that library, they can probably use a standard environment.
No, but they're never going to do it. I understand what you're saying. I think that's on us. So here's the thing. If we could cache it, if we see, oh, whoops, this person is trying to create an environment that is identical to an environment that was previously created, why not just use the previous environment? We're going to make a different session for it, but the same environment.
It's unlikely to happen, meaning that, if a user, unless someone is specifying something like NumPy or something, it's probably unlikely to happen that you have the very same set of dependency that we can reuse.
Fine.
So
sure,
what
you're
some
saying
optimization are done under the hood in any case, but the provision system that we're using, because it's reusing, relinking the same packages, etc. So maybe.
So what you're talking about here is a collection of standard evaluators, okay, stored somewhere. Okay.
Right.
Now,
right.
I don't understand why, if indeed you want to set up WFRs that use standard evaluators, why not actually use the Padlet right there? In other words, this mechanism seems backwards. If it is the case that you want a standard Python environment for a WFR and you know how to get it, right? And it doesn't depend on some history-dependent thing where somebody might have installed it, they might not. It's just an external Padlet, for example. Then refer to that Padlet in the WFR. And that way somebody can't change it out. Do you see what I'm saying? In other words, if you want, okay, here's a way to think about it. Create external evaluator. Okay, let me just understand, what does the code look like in a WFR that uses?
This is what the code will look like, in my opinion, like in WFR function.
Right now, right now in WFR, it's
think
just a
that's
start external session with a big giant association, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
And the
all right.
idea is that you put this association somewhere else, right?
No, I understand, but I don't like it. So let's figure it out. Okay. What you're saying is,
Look,
because-
it's not something that we need to resolve right now.
no, but
Steven,
let's figure it out. Let's figure it out. It's
Okay.
not so hard, right? Not so hard. The obvious way to do that, if it is indeed the case that we want some standard environments, is to have a repository of standard environments. Did you get what I'm saying?
Right, this is an idea they also Todd suggested at some point.
Right. Now, a junior way to do that is to just have a collection of packlets that represent standard environments. Or, so wait a minute.
Right.
So you're saying we say start external session and then a bunch of dependency information, right? So, but start external session could perfectly well refer to an external evaluator object. Yeah, why not do this? Why can't we have an external evaluator object? Okay, so ultimately that could be in a repository. But why can't there be a packlet of standard environments where there is a packlet symbol that corresponds to a particular standard environment? So that what you do is you say,
we probably don't even need the symbol itself, meaning that, for example, let's see if I have it. Well, I don't have it here, but I mean, the idea is that you will declare something like this, like external evaluate environment, and then you define the whole thing. So system goes to
okay, but
Python.
what if you're not using packlets? What if you just want to write something that just uses an external evaluate in a WFR, and you want to refer to a standard installation?
Okay, yeah. I mean, in that case, you use either a link or a cloud object, and this is already kind of working. We are
Okay,
adding
but may
support
I
for
make
it
a
right
suggestion
now.
here? Right? So this is why I'm saying, because we want to standardize it, we could have a repository of these things, right?
Mhm.
Or as a junior version of that, I mean, we could for now put these things into WFRs. We could have a no argument WFR function that is the external evaluator object. Maybe that isn't the best way to do it. Or we could have it be in a packlet and be a packlet symbol. But in
Or
the future, what's that?
Data repository, maybe.
I think I was thinking of that, but it doesn't seem like it fits there. I mean, it really is its own repository. And the only question, and a repository where, we would have, I mean, I don't know how many of these there are. Are there 10 standardized environments that you would imagine using, or is it more than that or less than that for Python, for example?
Maybe Ricardo has a different opinion, but I'm thinking about like there's a chemistry environment or an astronomy environment, that sort of thing, where you collect all the top 10 packages in that area together as a
right. So that's a great
that would make sense.
repository thing.
Yeah, that's a data repository thing, I think.
You think it's a data repository? I mean, we could put it
Yeah,
there.
it can just be one big data set that you
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, just you say like whatever the name of that repository function is, and then you say chemistry, and it gives you back an external.
All right, so it might be
evaluator.
Python packages list, resource data of Python packages list.
Yeah.
And then sub-value chemistry.
Something like that, yeah.
And that's the thing that you use in create external evaluator. Does that make sense to people?
Something like that. Ricardo, I mean that would work, right?
Yes,
he wants to cache it. So he really needs some kind of cache there, and maybe there's a way to cache it by having in that list having something which is some kind of ID that is a UUID. Yeah, in fact, this is an obvious way to do it. You have those dependencies, they're listed there, but you also have a UUID, which you use to create a single thing on your computer that is that. So every time you call that thing, it'll just go to the same UUID. Did that make sense?
I think that's what we're doing. We hash the dependencies, right? So essentially, if you're looking at asking for the exact same set of Python packages and versions, then
Yes,
you'll
the automatic
automatically
ID.
get the
Yes,
automatically
yes,
get.
there is an hash.
Okay, fine. So you're answering yeah, we talked about this ages ago, right? I remember thinking about this hash. Okay. So let's just look at what remains here of okay, so start external session, that's fine. What are these other things here? So these are sub-values of the session, is that correct?
Yes. So basically you start the external session, then you can extract the evaluator object. An evaluator, it's a property that already exists, and it's pointing to the actual concrete evaluator. So I was thinking
I'm not a fan
to
of that. I'm not a fan. I would call it a evaluator path or some such other thing.
Unfortunately, the name needs to be generic, right? Because if the evaluator is something like SQL, the evaluator is not a path. It's just connection information, something like that. So evaluator is the same thing that you use when you do start external session, the evaluator goes to, and you basically get back,
Okay,
I call this concrete evaluator in this case. But then the evaluator object is the symbolic one that contains all the information, both the concrete one and the symbolic
I'm
one.
not a fan of the name evaluator because I think we want to have something where you can say external evaluate, blah, blah, blah. I mean, look, it's like chat evaluate. Okay, chat evaluate allows LLM evaluator goes to LLM configuration. See what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Not familiar with
Okay,
this design,
so
but I can take a look
go
quickly.
find it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this chat evaluate,
Mm-hmm.
right, uses an LLM evaluator to determine what LLM to send this to. Okay.
Right.
So I'm imagining that we might want a thing. Okay. So external evaluate, the first argument is where we're sending. Is that correct?
Yes. Which is either a system, but now you can also send it directly to the evaluator object as well.
Okay, that's fine. That's consistent with that design with the chat there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's go back to what you're looking at. Okay, so now you are proposing. Okay, so there's a couple of different things here.
This is probably something that we can do in the future, but I'm saying that external evaluator second argument could be like the backend that you're using to discover the Python evaluator, which could be either okay, I want to discover evaluator locally on my machine, or I want to discover standard evaluators on
I really don't think this is a
on
good
the
idea.
registries.
It's not a good idea. I mean, we've got a bunch of related mechanisms with persistent value and so on. I mean, like you might want to discover it in, throughout your account, so to speak. And we have a mechanism for doing that with persistent values, right? So we should use that mechanism, not invent a new one. Like, for example, I might want to store my external evaluator information in such a way that I can get access to it from any machine. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that can be done with persistent value, but we need to figure out. So we don't want to invent a new mechanism here that doesn't use that, right? We don't want to invent a mechanism where you have a different way of doing this. In other words, things that are made persistent in your, we have persistence locations, we have all that stuff.
But I understand, but in general, they are all different backend, right? Because one backend is I need to scan the file system, and that is what I call local. And then you have another backend that is, yes, I don't know, persistent symbol or something.
No. Look, think about it. Okay, this thing about scanning the file system is its own weird thing. Okay? The scan the file system and try and find something, I don't know. I mean, to me, that almost feels like a completely different function. It's like, find a file. And maybe we need a general way of doing that, because in the end, it's going to be just find a file.
But this is what external evaluator solve and close is doing, basically, more or less. mean, external evaluators of Python is scanning your machine in order to find Python evaluators. This is it. Then if you have done create external evaluator, yes, you also need to find that, which is the registry lookup. So I basically have two lookup to do. One local file system, the other one is the registry lookup. But yeah, if you know, this might be an implementation detail that we don't want to expose.
We don't. I mean, we really don't. I mean, there's a path, presumably, that this thing's going to look on where you can choose. Do you want to use my locally defined thing first, or do you want to use the system one first? How is that being set up?
Right. This is also the confusing part that we have right now with fine external evaluators. When you do external evaluate, so what is happening right now is that when you do register external evaluator, that is going to be the default
mechanism.
one.
It's such a bad mechanism.
That's why we're trying to move away from that, but yeah.
Yeah, well, let's move away from it by killing that function, right? But we probably are going to need an external evaluator's path or something like that to be able to define. I mean, maybe we don't. I don't know. I mean, it might be useful to accumulate on your different machines. I'm not sure. I mean, one of the cases that I'm thinking about is I've set my thing up, I've defined my function on my desktop computer. Then I have my laptop. And
but that is only going to be an expression, Steven, because it's just code. You know, you don't need anything else than you know, just copy the external evaluator object and your dependency and stuff.
But because of your way of looking for things, that doesn't depend on the actual file location, correct? Because of the hashing that you're doing and so on. I mean, in other words, otherwise...
Yeah, sure, but it's not only that. Yeah, but it's not only that. I mean, it doesn't matter. You know, what is happening is that inside the evaluator, the new computer is going to use this specification in order to install things on your machine.
Okay, so you're telling me that if I've defined a function and I got an external evaluator object using create external evaluator object.
Yes. You can just copy that object,
I
put
use
it
create
into your
external
code.
evaluator.
Yes.
And then I take that object and I put it in my code that, unlike all other create things, and certainly in a register type thing, that thing that I create is transportable to another computer.
Right. Maybe instead of create, we need to call it ensure to make it more clear. But yeah.
Well, what do we? No. Let's think about this, okay? If that thing, if I go to another computer, no, this is so muddled. Oh my God. Okay. If we say create on one computer, then we say external evaluators on that computer, we will see everything we have created, correct?
Sure.
Okay. Now let's take the symbolic expression that is an external evaluator object and take it to another computer and use it somewhere. Okay?
Without doing create, it will just
without
work.
doing any create. I just take the symbolic expression. Okay? Now on that second computer, I say external evaluators. Will I or will I not see the evaluator that I just happened to use?
After you have used it, yes, you will see it because it was created on your machine. And when you do external evaluation,
okay, so your statement that the evaluation of external evaluator object does nothing is in fact false.
The evaluation of the external evaluator.
No, it's not false.
It's doing nothing. No, it's not false. It's just that you have used it under external evaluate. What I'm saying is that if you do external evaluate and then you put the object inside, right? External
then
evaluator.
That will implicitly add it to the list of external evaluators on that machine. Is that correct?
Yes, because it is created. External evaluators.
I'm going to have to go in a couple of minutes here.
Yeah.
And this makes sense. This makes sense to me. This is not, I think create external evaluator is useful this makes sense to me that it, like the moment you use it on a different machine, it's just going to recreate that environment on your machine. And it's fast and quick and yeah, like just boom. Okay, that's done.
And now, sorry, what did you just create?
No,
Oh, you just
I
ran
have
it
just
down.
showed you that you see this is the directory.
No,
that I
okay,
was
just
using.
explain. I got it.
Yes.
You got rid of those files. What did you just rerun?
Okay, so
You
external evaluators
reran
now.
line 1126. Is that correct?
Yes,
You
I ran this
reran that
guy.
line,
Yes,
and that
creates the
created an environment. And
On the fly, yeah.
But you needed to do, if you'd set external evaluators before you ran that external evaluate line, would it have been empty?
It would have been empty. Yes, this thing
Okay,
is
show
not
it to me.
doing
Show me that.
Sure.
When you
I delete this guy.
okay
Evaluate
now
this
no
guy.
don't run that. Just run this. Okay, just run that. External evaluators of Python. Run it, please.
You just did this
No,
below.
No, don't do it. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just run line 1131, external evaluators of Python. Okay? Just run that. Okay, why am I seeing anything there? I thought you just got rid of all your external evaluators.
Well,
Those are his machine ones.
Those are my machine one. I cannot delete those.
So that now do in 1129 again, the external evaluate. Just go slow. Okay.
Run that again.
And then now do the
now do external evaluators.
There should be one more. Now there's 4.
Okay.
You see that?
Yep.
And
that
makes
fine.
sense, Stephen. That's perfectly sensible.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I didn't see you were doing it too quickly. I did not see.
Yeah, it was very quick. Yeah, too.
Okay. All right. I get it. Okay. What else do we have to figure out here? I think this is quite nice, by the way. I think this design is quite nice. And I assume that for other languages, we can do something that is equivalent.
For R, we can do. For Node.js, we can probably do it.
Okay, but I mean, this whole mechanism of the external evaluator object, that's what we're going to go to for everything, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the design is generic.
Okay, but the thing about creating environments is only for specific languages.
Yes. And we are going to add support for R, possibly in this release. We'll see in what shape, but yeah.
Should really try to get that in 14.3. Then we can wrap that up, and we're at a good stopping point there.
Yeah, we're working on it right now, so there is a hope that we can do it.
It'd be really good if we could get that.
Sure.
But I like the create external evaluator thing. That's good. Then we have together with delete objects, basically. So you can delete, you can create them, you can use them, and you can delete them. That's a good triplet of functions.
I think so. And I mean, we can obsolete the other ones. And again, check for corner cases, because I'm not certain about that. And we may require some slightly different design for those corner cases, but it looks good to me. And I really like this external evaluator object. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Talk to you all soon. Thanks. And let's just check. Yes. Okay. Good stuff. See you all. Okay. Bye.
Thank you.